If you look at this play, what we're trying to get is a seal here and a seal here, and try to run this play in the alley.
You had a great pulling guard leading a tough, smart, patient running fullback around the end. That becomes the backbone of your offense, really.
The Green Bay offense is only as successful as the Green Bay sweep is.
His funeral was held in St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York. He died with the courage and grace that had always marked him as a man. Lombardi. A certain magic still lingers in the very name. It speaks of duels in the snow and cold November mud. For 9 years, Lombardi coached the Green Bay Packers. He drove them to 5 NFL championships and victories in the first 2 Super Bowls. His game plans contained a minimum of simple plays executed with a maximum of effort.
There's an old quote by Grantland Rice, and he's talking about class. And he said class is a very hard thing to define. It could be the swing of a slugger's bat, could be the lift of a thoroughbred's hoof, it could be the flick of a quarterback's arm. But he said once you see it, you'll never forget it. Tom Landry was class.
My wife says, what's that old man doing down on the 5-yard line there? Isn't that against the rules? Why don't they penalize him? And I said, we wouldn't be sitting here watching this game if it wasn't for that old man.
In 1920, I met with 10 other owners in an automobile showroom in Canton, Ohio, to form this organization which is now known as the National Football League. We had great confidence in our game even then, but none of us realized that professional football would achieve the great popularity that it has today.
He is the one that had the foresight to turn semi-pro football into a league.
Old-timers would tell me of the days when Hallis, the coach, owner of the Chicago Bears, would write his press releases and come up to the newspaper offices begging for a couple of paragraphs saying that the Bears were playing on Sunday, and here's some tickets, bring your family.
Few families were interested. Hallis changed all that in 1925 when he signed All-American halfback Red Grange to star in a barnstorming tour of 17 cities in 66 days. When the tour was over, the NFL had gained legitimacy.
He brought in Red Grange at a time when the league needed a big-name person.
Fans were willing to come out and see the Bears, even though they didn't know much about professional football at that stage.
With Hallis coaching, recruiting, and wooing the press, the Bears began to win before large crowds. In his 40 seasons as head coach, Hallis won 324 games and 6 NFL titles. Never happy with the status quo, he taught quarterback Sid Luckman the T formation.
The T formation and the man in motion was the Chicago Bears. That's what set them apart. They didn't play the old-style single-wing offense. They opened the game up.
Hallis used the T formation in the 1940 title game against Preston Marshall's Washington Redskins, beating them so convincingly that not a coach in America could ignore the strategy.
When they beat the Washington Redskins 73-0, every team in football, pro, college, and high school, all went to the T formation.
A tireless innovator, Hallis introduced scouting reports, game films, and the spy in the sky. He even utilized the halftime marching band as a form of psychological warfare.
He would do anything to distract the other team. I wouldn't put anything past him.
I used to say that George tapped the telephone lines from the press box to the bench.
An airplane would fly over practice field, and we'd all look up and say, I bet that's Hallis spying on our practice.
Lombardi loved Hallis. And in those days at Lambeau Field, both teams used our lockers. And we come back up after warm-up. There's a knock on the equipment door, and Hallis is standing in the doorway. And Coach Lombardi said,
George Hallis throws around $50 like manhole covers.
Said, I'm going to pay you this, and
And you were happy to get it, really. You might argue about it a little bit in your mind, but you were still happy to get it.
He said, you know, kid, they don't come to see you. They come to see Gail Sayers. Now, you know, what you're asking here is really out of line. And then in talking to Gail, he'd say the same thing. He says, you know, Gail, they come to see Dick. They don't come to see you.
He came up from those days when it was a very fight for survival. When players would make $100 for playing in a game, and Hallis had to scramble to come up with the money to pay him. He's like my parents and people that grew up in the Great Depression. The wolf was at the door, and I think that's what made Hallis what he was.
He was strong, unbending, and yet, in here, a lot of people didn't realize what a softy he was.
I could run through a wall for George Hallis because, you know, I know what he did for so many people off the field. I know when Brian Piccolo got sick, his hospital bills was short time that he was sick. He came to over $500,000. So the man took care of the whole thing. Many times he made my concerns his own. I love George Hallis, and I'm not, you know, afraid to say that.
And as the years went on, he became more and more charming. One time after a game, Hallis walked up to the referee that day and just really laid into him. And here were two nice little ladies waiting for Hallis's autograph. And without breaking stride, he turned around and said, "Ah, ladies, nice to see you. And did you enjoy the game?"
After winning the NFL title in 1946, the Bears didn't win again for 16 years. In 1963, Hallis got his last hurrah when his Monsters of the Midway beat the New York Giants for Chicago's 8th NFL title.
He'd been criticized as being too old for the game having passed him by, and this was proof that that was not true.
Hallis retired after the 1967 season. 5 coaches and 15 seasons later, he found a coach that embodied the Chicago Bears spirit. But Papa Bear died in 1983, 2 years before the Bears got back to the top.
If it wasn't for George Hallis, these players wouldn't be playing, these coaches wouldn't be coaches, and they wouldn't be making the kind of money they're making.
He was a great coach. And then he was a winner. He was a giant. In his times, there was nobody to compare with him.
Lombardi, Howlas, Landry, Walsh, and Ditka are just a few of the names of FootballFigure.net, Legends of the Fall series. FootballFigure.net offers more than 10 different coaching poses for the electric football diehards. Now, you can show the look of realism that of the team's legendary coach from our fall collection. At $35, you can collect the coach along with his display unit. Collect these to put in your private man cave. You will be the talk of your league. FootballFigure.net has 10 different coaches poses and are ready to order now. Go to www.footballfigure.net and place your order. Without the display, the cost of the figure would be $20. Order now, the player of your dream. Go to www.footballfigure.net and click on our gallery page. You will find the legendary coaches that made our autumn days worthwhile.